This morning, no regrets. From activist to state lawmaker, our interview with Representative-elect Shelley Luther. What kind of challenges do you expect to face in Austin? Why she wants a meeting with Governor Abbott, and how surviving an aneurysm last year has changed her. Plus a new push to eliminate statute of limitations, letting victims of child sexual assault sue their offenders anytime they want. But who keeps stopping this from becoming Texas law? State Rep Ann Johnson with us from Houston. A Texas Republican is blasting UT for offering free tuition to some Texas students. State Rep Brian Harrison on that, whether there are enough votes for school choice now, and will the legislature ever take testimony from Robert Robertson? And why aren't we seeing more Texans go to work for the next Trump administration? Something we'll discuss.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning, I'm Jason Whiteley. A lot to get to as we head into the holiday week here, but let's start with the headlines as always, and that big question of clout. Just how much will Texas have in the new Trump administration? So far, the president-elect has looked elsewhere for high-profile positions and his earliest cabinet picks. There is one exception, of course, we've talked about. Trump named John Ratcliffe his choice for CIA director. Ratcliffe used to represent a district in North Texas. The Texas Tribune with this story looking at the politics around these picks. You know, Texas wants to give Donald Trump a large ranch along the Rio Grande to build new detention centers for immigrants. It's 1,400 acres there in Starr County. That's between McAllen and Laredo. Texas Land Commissioner Dawn Buckingham offered up this ranch for the Trump administration to conduct mass deportations. And we now know the next leader of the Texas Department of Public Safety. His name is Freeman Martin, already a senior official at DPS. Martin is going to replace the current director, Steve McCraw, when he retires at the end of the month. McCraw leaves DPS with a reputation tarnished by politics and that inadequate response that DPS had to the Uvalde school shooting in 2022. A group of Texas Republicans this morning are furious at the University of Texas. UT announced it would give free tuition to students whose parents make $100,000 or less. Our first guest is State Rep Brian Harrison, a Republican from Midlothian. But we began with him, though, about the latest on that death row inmate, Robert Robertson. And will Texas lawmakers ever have him testify after the latest ruling from the state Supreme Court? Representative, welcome back to the program here. Let's start with the Robertson case. What is next with this after the Supreme Court ruling the other day? Because it's been going on for weeks and weeks now.
Yeah. Well, in light of what the Supreme Court just said, I don't know what the arguments would be to deny it. So yeah, my expectation is that we get his testimony. They were clear, multiple things. Our subpoena was valid, it was lawful, and explicitly we are authorized. It's within our purview to subpoena inmates in prison. So yeah, I expect we're going to hear from him, and we need to.
So does the committee now take this Supreme Court order and take it to TDCJ and say, listen, here's the Supreme Court. We want to sit with this inmate and hear from him. What happens next?
Yeah, again, the discussions on the logistics are ongoing, as well as the details of the subpoena. But what we have wanted, what has been our position, is that we collect his testimony, we're able to receive his testimony, and we prefer to do it in person.
Let's talk politics for a moment here. Do you think there are finally enough votes to pass school choice in the legislature?
I sure hope so. Look, I'm probably...
No one seems 100% on this. Everyone I'm talking to.
They shouldn't. People who are saying that this is a done deal are either ignorant or they're lying to you. I'm probably the loudest and most vocal supporter of school choice in the Texas House of Representatives. And I worked very hard through the primary season, along with Governor Abbott and Ted Cruz and Ken Paxton, to primary, and President Trump, to primary my Republican colleagues who opposed parental freedom and school choice. We defeated many of them. So we have more votes than we ever have in the history of Texas in the House to support school choice. But the devil's in the details. The bills need to be a lot better than they were last session. They were not universal. They were financially irresponsible and reckless. We need to have a bill that's done right. Look, over 34 other states have already empowered their parents with some kind of school choice. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We need to learn from the successes of other states. We need to pass a school choice program that is truly universal. And by that, I mean every family that wants an education savings account to send their kids to the school of their choosing should get one.
Let's talk about something the UT system did the other day. It's offering free tuition to any students whose families make less than $100,000. You take issue with that. Tell us why.
Absolutely. This is an absolutely outrageous abuse of power. If the state of Texas is going to become more socialist than California, which is what we're doing here, California offers, quote, free college, which, by the way, there is nothing free. Anyone who's taken a basic economics course, nothing's free. But California offers free college for those making up to $80,000 a year. That's outrageous enough. While Texas, we are now more socialist than California, offering, quote, free college to people in families of $100,000 a year. And to do what? They're going to give free college if you make $100,000 a year to go and study LGBTQ sexuality studies. This is outrageous. Public higher education in Texas is off the rails. The inmates are running the asylum. Let me tell you what this is. This, if you care about the protection of separation of powers as I do, this is an abuse of power because the legislature never voted on this. Rogue, unelected executive branch bureaucrats on their own decided to make Texas more socialist than California. There's got to be consequences for this. Budgets need to be cut. People need to be fired. And I will be working every day to bring accountability for this type of rogue behavior next session.
Representative, we appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
You bet. Always great to talk to you, Jason.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk about the politics of this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I am Mitra here from the Texas Tribune in Austin, and Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. He said there has to be consequences for this at UT. Budgets need to be cut. People need to be fired. What do you think is going to happen, if anything?
Well, Jason, first of all, I think this is a head fake by UT. They're saying, okay, you don't want us to have affirmative action where we make decisions by race, so we'll make decisions by income. And then when the legislature comes back and says, we don't like that either, we don't like giving money to poor kids, UT is going to say, okay, how do you want us to make decisions? How do you want us to choose our enrollment? How do you want us to uplift the children of Texas who you've told us you want 50% of them to read by 2050 or whatever the pitiful goal is now that the state's setting. He's saying it'd be terrible if we were like California. California is regarded the best education system in the country. Poor kids get some sort of a lift. Maybe it's not $100,000, but that's a pretty reasonable income level now.
What do you make of this? You're literally right down the street from the university there.
Yeah, and this is really setting the stage for an interesting debate that's going to happen as we head into the legislative session here too. And this is also coming at a time when Greg Abbott has told public universities that they're going to have to keep their tuition flat, and so an interesting thing to think about in as well with this. And so, also, when Representative Harrison was referring to this as a socialistic move, one of the biggest proponents of this is a former state senator, Republican Kevin Eltife, who's not known to be, on the left side of things. So it'll be continue to be an interesting debate.
Yeah, will this rise to the level of where they actually take action, Bernadine? We're still 50 days away.
Well, that remains to be seen, but my question is, why wouldn't legislators want to educate more people, more students, more kids? And in order to do this, like Bud said, you're cutting out incentives for those kids who can't go. So now you don't even want to help them financially. And also, it's taking away the ability for schools to make decisions on their own. And I think that the debate will be there, but whether or not they rise to that level and do anything about it, it waits to be seen. But why wouldn't you want to educate more kids?
Yeah, valid question. A lot more ahead here, including this. When we come back this morning, State Rep-elect Shelley Luther, why she wants to meet with the governor and the challenges she expects to face in Austin. Plus, another push to make it easier for victims of child sexual assault to sue their perpetrators. Why is Texas so far behind other states? State Rep Ann Johnson from Houston when Inside Texas Politics returns. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Victims of child sexual assault in this state have a limited amount of time to sue their perpetrators in civil court. There's a statute of limitations, not for prosecuting them in criminal court, just for making them pay for their crimes. State Rep Ann Johnson is trying to change that next year in the legislature. She is a Democrat who represents the west side of Houston. Representative, welcome back to the program here. Right now, survivors of child sexual abuse in this state have 30 years from their 18th birthday if they want to sue their perpetrator in civil court. You introduced a bill that's going to eliminate that timeline. This seems like an easy fix to me to existing Texas law.
Me too. But this is now the third session in a row where we have offered this legislation, and I hope for the first time that we will get a hearing so that other Texans can hear from the victims who have suffered abuse at the hands of individuals, oftentimes that were being shielded by organizations or institutions that have avoided civil responsibility. Meaning in Texas, we recognize that if you're a perpetrator, that there is no statute of limitations. Meaning at any point in time that somebody comes forward and says that they were abused as a child, that individual can be held accountable. Those criminal courthouse doors are open, but right now the civil courthouse doors are closed. And to me, that doesn't make sense.
Let's talk about the politics of this for a moment. There's no statute of limitations for these victims in criminal court. You're trying to get one in civil court. Tell me who is against this. Is it churches, these other large childhood organizations, or who is it that's actively campaigning behind the scenes to prevent this from getting heard in committee?
Well, that's part of the issue. Because we haven't had a committee hearing, the public doesn't know the answer to that question. But we know who perpetrators are. We've heard about the Southern Baptist Convention. We've heard about the Boy Scouts. We've heard about some of the church abuse scandals and whether or not those people ought to be held accountable. I'm not sure what Texas is afraid of. There have been many states, in fact, the majority of states have said, right this wrong, open up the civil courthouse doors and give a chance for these victims to be heard. And guess what? All these organizations still exist. The sky has not fallen. They have not been sent into ruin. The frightening things that people will say have to keep us from allowing these victims to be heard are not happening in any other state, and I don't believe they would happen here in Texas. What I do believe would happen if you opened up the hearing room, if you opened up the courthouse doors and you heard from these victims, then every Texan would learn about what's a good organization and what's not, who's protecting kids and who's not. What are the signs of sexual abuse? I do not understand why the state of Texas continues to shield sexual predators and the organizations that have protected them.
Representative, good to see you again. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Our next guest this morning is going into the Texas House of Representatives with her own list of priorities. You likely know her name, Shelley Luther, the Dallas salon owner who refused public orders to close her business during COVID. Well, voters are sending Luther to the legislature in January, and she'll be representing Sherman, Denison, and beyond. And she is also on this week's episode of Politics on how that act of defiance had lasting effects on Governor Abbott politically. What you did single-handedly pushed the governor further right. Single-handedly. Have you ever spoken to the governor one-on-one about this, on the phone, face-to-face or anything?
So the first time that we've spoken in person was recently after I won the election.
That's the first time. It was 4 years.
Yes.
Have you thought about that? Have you thought about your influence on him politically? Because he changed based on what you did.
And he stayed that way.
I remember watching this.
I have learned that if you want to get anything done, especially in politics, you have to draw the line and say, but what? You have to be that person to be like, oh, okay, but what?
What did he say to you when you spoke to him? Did he just congratulate you or say something else?
He congratulated me and we spoke about something that's going on in my district and basically haven't discussed that matter yet. I'm hoping to. I want to.
You do? What do you want to say to him?
I just want to sit in a room with them actually and just put it behind us. Because it's a big elephant in the room right now. I feel like I'm not mad about it. I'm really not, because he was in a situation himself. Like he wasn't like, I wouldn't have wanted to be him either, trying to feel like he was trying to protect his state and the people that live there.
But you recognize that your act changed him politically.
I do. I recognize that.
And you say that with a smile.
I mean, I'm not mad about it.
What kind of challenges do you expect to face in Austin?
Well,
you thought about that one.
I just don't want to play games. I don't, and it's a lot of games in the Texas House. It's a tit for tat and not just doing what's right. And so I'm not afraid of it, but I'm there to get stuff done, and I don't want to play around. And so I'm not looking forward to that. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my morals or values for anything.
You know, after what you've been through, you know, forget about the salon stuff, forget about running for office multiple times, the health issues recently with, you know, all the strokes and the aneurysm. I'm curious how that changed you, like your outlook on life and your outlook on politics. That has to change you when you go through something like that.
Yeah, it did. So I wasn't supposed to live through that. Like, I should not be. I mean, I know I'm sitting here talking to you and everybody's like, it must not have been that bad. If you looked at any pictures of me or saw any video of me, I was not myself, and I should have died. I had speech impediments and stuttering, and I couldn't think of regular words, and went through a long time feeling sorry for myself, sitting around after that. Honestly, like not washing my hair, not showering, like, I mean, people go through, and I want to be honest about that because there's people that are going through that. I will tell you, it changed me as a person. I don't think the same way. I don't sweat the small stuff, but I'm also more compassionate.
Did you know, though, Shelley Luther raised kangaroos? She sure did. We learned a lot about her in this episode of Y'all-ticks. It's ready to download this morning wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back here on this program, though, the roundtable standing by and ready to take the questions.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Bud, Ian, and Bernadine all back with us here. Let's start with what's happening on the border, Bud. Texas is really gearing up for border crackdown. The land commissioner, Don Buckingham, offering Donald Trump this ranch, 1,400 acres, to fulfill his campaign promise of deporting undocumented immigrants here.
Yeah, did I get this right? She offered the state of Texas as a concentration camp for illegal. No, I'm kidding. It was just a ranch. It was, and it was a ranch that the state of Texas was about to take through threat of eminent domain. The state was going to take it anyway to build 1.5 miles of wall. This wall is available. It's near La Casita in Stark County. The ranch is available. This is what we're going to see. This is why the stock price for companies that build private prisons has shot up over the last 2 weeks.
And we had Dan Patrick on a few weeks ago, Ian, and he said the state's going to have to, spend less on the border because Donald Trump got reelected.
That's right. Even Governor Greg Abbott said the same thing, that they could shift resources, spend less on Operation Lone Star. What it's showing there is a perceived alignment here with the Trump, with the incoming Trump administration, that they believe that there's going to be more coming from the Trump administration on this, so they don't feel like they need to invest as much, and there's going to be an opportunity to work with the administration in a way that they weren't working with the Biden administration.
I would still guess that 1,400 acres, though, in Stark County or anywhere in the state is a nice chunk of change, Bernadine.
Well, and that's the question I have. When you use the term that they're going to give this land to this ranch or this land to the Trump administration, are they going to charge them for it? Are we just going to give it to them? And I'm sure that administration would not need money where we would just give it to them. But I think that it shows that Texas is willing to come support Trump in anything that he wants to do in terms of setting those. What?
Dr. Buckingham did say it's temporary, and so I assume Texas keeps that land. We're not giving the land to the federal government, but we're letting the federal government use that land.
Temporary, and then they're just going to take it back.
But and this is going to create whatever jobs it creates for people to guard I still call it the concentration camp in Starr County. I mean, it's going to create jobs, and people in South Texas, obviously through their votes, say that they like I don't know if it's peace and quiet or the reduced crime and the public safety of having half the DPS patrolling the border.
And Republicans down there clearly won the border, those border counties. Let's talk about the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives, Bud, meeting next month to talk about who the next speaker is going to be. David Cook and Dade Phelan. We've heard constant talk about Dade Phelan has the votes wrapped up. Does he, though?
Everything I hear is different from people who know. It's like people who I think would say Phelan say that Phelan doesn't have it. People who I think would be all for Cook go the other way. It's like he has 47 pledges now. It takes 53 to win the caucus, or then you go into the vote where it takes all the Democrats plus how many? What's the math? A handful, 11 Democrats. I
Sure.
think it's more than that. But it could go to the vote. I can't tell at this point. I think it's still being fought person by person, member by member.
And the fact that Bud can't tell, and none of us can tell, it says just how serious this is for Dade Phelan.
It is, and I imagine that ahead of this caucus meeting next month, there's gonna be a lot of arm twisting, a lot of texting, and a lot of calling, and kind of like, what are you doing? What are you doing? There's going to be a lot of that still to come. So even though there are some commitments, there's still a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and hand wringing to do.
Bernadine, if Dade Phelan loses the gavel, what message does that send?
That they're ready to go even further to the right.
Does that happen, though? Do you think Phelan has the votes? Do you think he'll be the next speaker?
Jason Wiley, now you just asked me that, and we just said that nobody knows. But
Well, what are you hearing? You talk to a lot of people.
The same thing. They don't know. And but you hear a lot that Phelan has the votes, but he has to get those votes from Democrats. But I will say this, that if he holds onto that gavel and he gets a number of votes from Democrats, he will never have a peaceful day during that session.
That's a good point, Bud.
Because they're going to attack him primarily on everything. And
Yeah.
now, as we heard earlier in the show, that Representative-elect Shelley Luther says she doesn't want to hold, she wants to get things done.
Yeah.
So
Jason,
how are you going to get things
The
done?
Speaker's job is to stand up to Dan Patrick and get the members of the House reelected. Dade Phelan showed he's really good at the first, not so good at the second, but would David Cook be any better?
Yeah, a lot to look forward to here. Guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics, and we hope to see you then. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving.